Hi everyone, Frankie from easypowerwall.com. Two birds, one stone. Who knows the English expression? Well, this applies to this week's video. Behind me you see a battery power box. We're gonna test the batteries inside and I give you a step-by-step guide on how to assemble this UBP power box. Interesting content. Follow me on the journey. As with the previous movie, I will also open this box live for you. UBP power. My contact person was Giali Ella. Warehouse was located in Europe and Warsaw. And this one is even a bit cheaper than the previous ones. $65 for one cell delivered at my doorstep. It's also an EVE cell, LF280K. Communication was very straightforward. Even in the middle of the night, China night, they were ready to help me. So I'm very curious what's in the box. The foam fits perfectly fine in the box, so the cells were secured. That's very important. We have the same fiber material to insulate the cells. Definitely not the same as the previous ones, where it was more plastic. Here it's a paper envelope. But good news, they also insulated the bus bars. The same style, same quality, same weight, and just regular nuts. So far so good. In the previous batch we had the MB30 and MB31, and this one is the LF280K. So it's definitely another cell. EVE 280K. They don't mention the capacity, but of course we will test this for you. This looks very similar to the cells of Shenzhen Bayer Seite. They have the same wrapping method. Let's check if the cells match voltage wise, if they're all from the same batch. Let's check the capacity of the cells. First battery returned a value of more than 301 amp hour. The second test went less smooth. A Windows 11 update forced a reboot of the PC. Then I remembered I could see the capacity on the LCD. 298.4 amp hours. A bit off and not fair towards UBP to see this as a valid result. So I tested again and found an even lower value. So I'm not too sure about these UBP LF280K batteries. The integrity and physical appearance of the cell is okay. There's no bulging. As you can see, it's well packed. Several layers of protection. Wow, very nice and neat case. Proper handlebars. Let's open the box and see what tools and hardware is inside the box. The top protection is attached to the frame, even during transport. So all hardware isn't loose. It's all well attached in the box. And it can't damage or scratch the box inside during the transport. Ow. First of all, we have our JK-BMS, the well-known JK-BMS that I have reviewed in my channel before, which is still a very popular YouTube clip. Let's do a 360 around the box. The sides. On the front we have the two connectors from negative and positive, the JK-BMS information screen, and there the Anderson connector to charge the battery. The same on the other side. This is the bottom. As you can see, no rubber tips. It's not air or watertight. I really recommend to add some rubber tips. Of course, make sure to glue them here on the frame. Do not drill them, especially not when the cells are installed. All these items are already pre-installed by the vendor. The only thing you have to do is add the cells and connect everything. The kit comes with a lot of hardware. First we have the fiber sheets to make sure everything is well isolated from the box. Some more EVA foam strips. One of the key components is the BMS. It's the well-known JK-BMS 12 volts. This model is the JK-B1A 8S20P. It can balance at 1 amp. It can handle 200 amps continuously and 350 amps peak power. And it's for a 4 to 8S configuration. What else is in the box? That's this, all the little screws. More screws, I suppose, to add the BMS to the frame. All cables to protect the studs from the batteries once finished. The positive and negative connector and the big screws. And of course the bus bars. So it's more or less a Lego system. We have to assemble it and I will do it together, step by step. I've seen the video created by UBP, but I think I can do a slightly better job. So let's do this for the community, so everyone can build this system. Even with limited electronic or DIY skills, everyone should be able to build this kit. Let's start and put the box on the shelf. First thing you have to do is to unscrew the front panel so we can add the batteries. Make sure not to lose these screws, you will need them again to reassemble the kit. Now put the front on a safe place where you won't scratch the front. Now I will remove this frame, this panel. Just add the compression to the cells. Next thing we need is this piece of EVA foam delivered with the kit. That comes at the bottom of the box. It is self-adhesive, you can see. Make sure you start installing the EVA foam from the very far end of the box till here. If you leave some spacing or a small gap, then it will prevent a proper installation of the compression plate. It will be much more difficult to compress the cells. Next step, installing cells and the epoxy boards delivered with the kit. Of course, you have to respect the order of the cells. The first cell has the negative side on the right side. The epoxy boards prevent making a short or a contact between the cells and the box. Of course, the cell is already protected by its sleeve, but in case of an event where the sleeve is damaged, this is just extra safety. You not only put this at the back of the box, but also on the side. And for that, UBP delivered 2 large epoxy boards. And we put this here on the side. As with the EVA foam, make sure to put it at the end of the box, otherwise you can't compress the cells. After the first cell, we add another epoxy board. For the second cell, we change the polarity. Otherwise, we won't get the 12 volt. So minus positive. Another epoxy board. Cell number 3. As you can see, this is pretty straightforward. Cell number 4, I'm sorry. And also, before adding the compression plate, we have another epoxy board. As you can see, the cells have good quality. There are no gaps, no bulging. I'm a bit surprised of the spacing between the cells and the frame. It's like, I think 4 millimeter. On both sides, I have a little spacing of a few millimeters between the battery and the box. Honestly, I don't know what's the reason for that. Is it cooling? I suppose when the compression plate is attached again, these cells will be fixed, so they won't move in the box. Make sure if you unscrewed the screw that you put it in the right position. This screw should be at the top. It's here where you will mount the bracket for the BMS. Before we put the screws here at the compression plate, check and double check the polarity of the batteries. Minus positive, minus positive, minus positive, minus positive. We need 4 screws to attach this compression plate. They're all delivered with the kit, so I take 2 more. All cells are now in the box. As you can see, they were compressed in the box. They had low state of charge, so when they're fully charged, there will be even more compression. Next step is adding the bus bars. We take the 3 bus bars delivered with the kit, and also these stud protectors. With this solution, the studs are completely covered and no accidental contacts can be made with the stud. The nuts are delivered as well, but before using them, we will first connect the BMS leads. We have several wires. Just maybe check again if they're making a good contact with the connector. I checked it and result is fine. And now I will connect them to the cells. Here's the most negative side from our system. So here comes the ground. Because there's a difference in length, it's very difficult to make a mistake. But here we have the positive connector. The third wire goes to this bus bar. Wire number 4 goes to this connector. And finally, the most positive wire will be attached here. But of course, we need to attach this to the BMS too. I will just with all balance leads installed, I want to check the voltage on the connector. But before we can actually measure the voltage, we have to connect the wires properly. I like to use this equipment. It measures the power you put on the nut. In the specifications, it's written that you can use 4 to 8 Newton meters, and I'm gonna set it up to 5. So it's set to 5. This is a very nice piece of equipment. It's not that expensive. I think it's 40 euros, $40. So if you're gonna build more batteries in the future, really recommend this this unit. As always, there's a link here under the video where you can buy this. When you hear the solid beep, it's properly attached. Of course, you don't need to buy this if you're only gonna build one battery. Just make sure not to over tighten. If the stud breaks, then this will be a very expensive replacement. The balance leads are attached. Now let's see if we made a good connection. .31 from the first cell, 6 volt, 9, and then 12 for close to 13 volts. Connections with the BMS lead are fine. So we can start installing the BMS on top of the battery cells. So far so good. We're only 10 minutes into the project and we already have the cells installed with the BMS leads. Before installing the subframe on the cells here on the frame, make sure to install this piece of EVA foam, of course delivered with the kit. This will prevent making a short between the cells. Just take your time. This is a very clever design of UBP. They made these savings in the subframe so the valves are still visible, and in case of an emergency or too much pressure inside the cell, they can still release the pressure. Attach it to the frame with the 4 screws. With the subframe attached, this would put some extra pressure on the cells so they won't be able to move inside the box. I noticed I made a mistake here. These stud protectors, they have an opening on the side, and I have my cable here. So I will loosen it again and make sure this cable goes here on the side and not at the back of the stud. So, that's better. I noticed there were some tie wraps. I don't know if it's made for these small wires, but I will use maybe not tie wrap, but some other stuff to make sure these cables stick together. I'm gonna use this Velcro tape. Next step, adding the BMS. Make sure the connectors are at the front of the box. To attach the BMS, they use the smaller screws delivered with the package. Be careful, make sure you don't drop a screw in the gap between the cells and the box. It is possible. You see, they fit into the small gap, so just be careful. Now we have to attach the cables from the B- to the negative side. There were 3 cable sets delivered with the kit. We start with the smaller one, not the smallest one, but this one. This will go from here to the negative pole. If you have to go somewhere, always protect your connectors. Put them in a plastic bag so they can't make contact with the frame. You're safe. I have to look for the bolts here of the BMS. I thought I misplaced them, but here they are. I'm probably gonna need a bigger screwdriver to attach them properly, but for now it's okay. Now I take the larger one to connect this side of the BMS. I don't think the connectors are the highest quality. They could have done a slightly better job here. It's pretty thin. the negative side of the BMS is installed. We have to do the positive side, but first we have to install the front so we can connect these connectors to the front of the box. Let's go back to the top view. We have this thick cable left. This goes here. There are two different connectors. The one with the smaller opening goes over the stud. The larger one is for the connector. Don't make the same mistake. I already attached this one, but this one is not properly attached, and you see you will damage the thread. So first connect the cable to the battery and then to the connector. You do the same for the negative side. These cables are a bit longer and a bit more flexible. A little detail. I will first install the cable from the BMS, so it has a lot of surface on the connector, and the cable from the charge port will go on top. This one will probably not have as much current as the one from the BMS. Next step is attaching the BMS leads. This is the B+, B-, B- is ground. This is the black cable. This one goes left. On the other side you can't make any mistake because you have this savings here in the connector. You have to put this in this way. If you haven't checked the voltages before, make sure you check them before you insert the connector, but we did this earlier in the process. This little connector is for the screen of the front plate. The red wire from this connector goes to the most positive wire of the connector. So you most probably can't make any mistake, but just in case. And then there is one cable left to connect, and these are the two temperature sensors. Install one here. And the other one here in front of the BMS. Well, the job is done. This was pretty straightforward. You don't need a lot of skills to mount these batteries, build this box. This is well engineered. So far I can recommend it. Now let's see step 3. Start configuring the BMS. Of course there will be a cheat sheet available in the download. I will go over all settings, give some explanation so you can set up the BMS yourself. There is a button on the screen. Let's see if it already works. It does. We see the voltage, ERR9, error 9, probably the configuration. We see the temperature, the voltage, and the state of charge. Now let's go back to the configuration of the BMS. This will be done on the smartphone. And of course I will do a screen recording so you can follow step by step. Download the app from Apple or Play Store. Start the app, and when Bluetooth is active, your BMS will appear in the device list. Just click on that to enter the JK-BMS. We notice there's an alarm, so let's click on that. For now, most important is to change the cell count. To make changes, you have to enter the standard password 123456. Change the cell count to 4, and while I'm in the menu, I change the battery capacity to 290 amp hours. I never start balancing when voltage difference between cells is less than 20 millivolt. Before changing advanced settings, select the correct technology. Choose LiFePO 4. Very important, if you click another technology, all settings will be overridden. I will not go over all settings. There's a cheat sheet available free for download. As mentioned before, there's a video on my channel where I test and review this BMS. Both links will be available under this video. Some additional info about over voltage protection and over voltage protection return. I found this a strange value for battery voltage, but after some research I found that the BMS multiplies the voltage with the number of cells. I often get questions on when to start balancing. As download curve is very flat, you should not start balancing below 3.4 volt for the 12 volt pack. Do not enter resistance value into the wire resistance settings. Just leave as is. Once you entered all parameters in the settings tab, you can activate charge, discharge and balance. The emergency tab is to override all security settings. If cell voltage is below 2.6 volt and you still need to use the battery, activate emergency. This might have an impact on battery life, so use it only in real emergency situations. One final test before we can come to the conclusions. I will perform a load test. I will connect this heater, about 800 watts, for about 15 minutes and see if we can identify any hotspots around the BMS or connectors. By the way, thanks to my colleague and friend Marnik to let me use his inverter. This is very helpful, so thanks again, Marnik. Use a large PH3 Phillips screwdriver to tighten all screws. Here I'm connecting the battery to the inverter. Switch on the inverter. Switch on the 1 kilowatt heater and the display shows a current of plus 75 amps. Double checking with the Unity clamp meter to confirm the current. As a final test, checking the battery and BMS for hotspots with an infrared meter. I just finished the load test and I can conclude that everything works fine. There are no issues. Cables are not getting too hot. The highest temperature I've seen was like 32 degrees. So everything is well dimensioned, and yeah, congratulations to UBP Power. They did a great job. Let's draw conclusions. On the first part, the battery cells, they perform as advertised. These LF280Ks, they have capacity around 300 amp hours. So well above the advertised specifications. Voltage wise, they really matched, as well as with internal resistance. Capacity wise, there was a slightly larger deviation compared to the MB30 and MB31. But hey, these cells, they are like $10 cheaper. So that's a trade-off that you have to make. But these cells are okay. About part 2, the box. I mentioned this before, UBP did a great job. They well engineered it, it's easy to assemble, it's a real DIY job. Price is really good, so I really recommend this box. Is there room for improvement? There's definitely room for improvement. I really recommend to add or buy some rubber tips under the box. The box has a real nice surface. It would be a real pity to put some scratches the first day you have the box in use. Also for the company, I recommend to add the one-pager of JK-BMS. I couldn't find it in the box. As well as a link to assemble these boxes. There was no information available. So if this box gets popular after this video, this could create a stream of questions and remarks towards your company. So UBP sales, add a link of this video to your sales and it will help a lot to reduce the mails towards your company. If you have questions, please use the comments. I'll be happy to help you. If you want to support this channel, you can buy me a coffee. And I'll see you soon for more content. This was Frankie for easypowerwall.com. One final tip before I close the box. At the inside we have the epoxy board. Write the production date and the password for the JK-BMS. Just do it. Thank me later.